Negative 500.
I wanted to bring the x squared up.
Yeah, let's bring it up as negative 2. Now, the reason why I didn't leave it down there is because it's not going to be a natural log. Why is it not a natural log?
Because it's just going to be 500 over
Because it's squared, right? It would be a natural log had that just been an x, right? Then it would be natural log because it's x to the first power. But because it's squared, it's not the special case. So I can rewrite it like this. Y'all good with that? Okay. Now, the negative 500 is going to come for the ride. I'm actually going to do the antiderivative, so no more integral symbol. Negative 500 comes for the ride times, and now I need to do my little math on this one. I'm going to do 1 over, I'm going to add 1 to this. So that's negative 1. And then I have x raised to the negative 1, right? Plus c, thank you. Plus c. Do not forget the plus c. Any questions on that? Sure? What does this turn out to be? If I clean it up a little bit? Just 500, right? Because you had negative 500, then a negative 1. So let me write this down. I've just found the average cost function. It's right here. The average cost function is 500 x to the negative 1 plus c. Right? That's what I've found. Let me write this one more way. The average cost function that we have found is 500 over x plus c. I just brought that x back down. They gave you the derivative of the average cost function. We did the antiderivative to find the average cost function. We have it, but there's an infinite number of these, right? We don't know which one it is, right? That's where this piece of information is going to come into play. They tell us, look, the average cost at x equals 100 is 40. That means that if I replace my x with 100 right here, this should spit out 40. Let me write that down. I'm still in part A here. So now, using that C, the average cost at 100 is 40, we have that 500 over 100 plus C must equal 40. See, this is a function, right? This is a function. If we plug 100 into it, it needs to spit out 40. So if I plug 100 into this, that's right there, this all needs to spit out 40. Make sense? So what is 500 over 100? 5. So this is really saying 5 plus C equals 40. And if I subtract 5 on both sides, what's C? 35. Going to recap again. We're almost to the answer for part A. They gave us the derivative of the average cost function. We took the antiderivative and we said, hey, we know what the average cost function is, but we're off by a constant, which means there's an infinite number of them that it could be. Then we say, oh, wait, they gave us a little bit more information about that average cost function, that when you plug in 100, you get 40. And from that, we are able to nail down the exact C, the exact function. So that means we have our answer for part A, and I'll do it, I guess, up here in purple. So the average cost function is 500 over x plus 35. Y'all agree? Any questions? That's the answer to part A. Now we want the cost function. Now we want the cost function. So do we know the difference between the average cost function and the cost function? Like, how are they related? Let's look at that before we move on. Let me just remind you, if somebody gives you a cost function versus the average cost function, let's make sure we understand what the difference is. The cost function gives you the cost for your company to produce a certain number of items. So let's say you have these glasses, you have a cost function that tells you how much it's going to cost you to make 100 of these or 1,000 of these or 1,000,000 of these, right? That's your cost function. Your average cost function, what it does is it takes that total cost and it divides it by the number of actual sunglasses you sell or produce, which will give you the cost per pair of sunglasses, which is your average cost. So the relationship here between the two is this, that this right here is actually just your cost function divided by X. Okay? So your average cost function is your cost function divided by how many things you sell. Do y'all see that right there? We need this big time right now. Questions? What are we trying to find in this part B? Cost function. So we want to know what this is, right? What do we know though? We know the average cost, right? We have this function up here. We have the average cost. How are the two related to one another? The average cost is our cost function divided by X, right? So if I wanted to figure out what just this cost function is, couldn't I multiply both sides of this by X? And I would get the X's to cancel, and that means my cost function should be my average cost function times X. So to do part B, all you have to do at the end of the day, if you're just looking like, how the hell do I do part B? All you do is you take that answer and you multiply it by X. Okay, so my cost function is going to be X times my average cost function, which is going to be X times 500 over X plus 35. And what would happen if you distribute this X through to both of those? What happens in this first multiplication to the X's? They cancel, so you just get the 500. And then plus, and then X times the 35, you get 35X. This is your cost function. Questions there? We have answered part B, haven't we? This is part B. This was part A. And what about part C? What are your fixed costs? So when you go back and remember when you learned about cost functions in 1324, if you have a linear cost function like this, the fixed costs are always the constant. This number right here. See, because this number is no matter what, no matter how many glasses you produce, it's 500. So the answer to part C is 500. You have a homework problem like that, all right? So make sure you do your homework for 13-1 or 13.1. I believe I've given you everything you need to do that. Have a good day. I know a few of you wanted to come by and pick up your tests. So we'll scoot out of here real quick.